Hi everyone, so in the next series of lessons we're going to look at the component parts of aggregate demand. Now, aggregate demand of course consists of consumption, investment, government spending and exports minus imports, that trade balance there. The first area we'll start with will be consumption. Consumption of course is heavily influenced by the level of saving in an economy as well. But let's get started. So consumption of course reflects spending on by households on consumer goods. Nice and straightforward. We saw this within our circular flow of income and that modelling there. Okay, within the UK economy in 2016, 66% of UK GDP growth was attributed to consumption. So it's absolutely vital in terms of the economic growth of the UK, but that does also have its downsides, particularly as people do get concerned about the level of debt that households do take on to undertake such consumption. Compare that with the Chinese economy, much lower contribution to overall GDP growth there, and 39%. Okay, so interestingly in 2017, some news has just come out in the last week on this, that UK savings rates have actually fallen to the lowest level in history at just 4.9%. So of course we can see there's a lot of consumption taking place. Meanwhile, that will mean that there's therefore very little saving. You compare that with the Chinese economy, you would see this much higher. Okay, so there's a number of factors of course that will determine the level of consumption being undertaken within an economy. That will include elements such as income levels within the economy. If income levels are rising, of course more consumption can be expected to be undertaken in most circumstances. Interest rates, the level of interest within a given economy. This of course will influence the savings rate, the rate at which people choose to save. Consumer confidence also has a significant role to play. If people feel confident about the state of the economy, they feel confident about the jobs that they have and the income they're receiving, they're again likely to undertake more consumption. Then the ease and availability, ease with which you can access and the availability of credit, that is borrowing. So this could be in forms such as loans and mortgages, but it can be other forms as well, such as credit cards. Right, so we've also got temporary or permanent income changes to consider within this as well. So if you just have a temporary increase in your income, you may choose to spend all of that, but if it's a permanent increase, you may actually choose to save much more of that. It very much depends upon the individual, but certainly culturally we can see that the UK economy does have a passion for consumption. Right, so let's break this down further now. We need to understand the average rate at which people will consume and what people will choose to do with any sudden increases in their actual income levels. How will they choose to actually consume based upon any changes there? Right, so the average propensity to consume is a useful tool in helping us to understand at what rate people actually consume. So you can see here that we have the proportion of total income spent. Okay, so the average propensity to consume is simply calculated by the level of consumption divided by the income. So if you earn an income of perhaps £10,000 and you spend £8,000, then the average propensity to consume would be 80%, of course. All right, so nice and straightforward there. Marginal propensity to consume, however, measures the proportion of any change in income spent on consumption. Now this is a really important formula that you need to be good with. Okay, so if we just imagine, nice straightforward example, an increase of £100 of income here. So we've got £100 of income, and perhaps you actually choose to change your consumption level by a further £60. Well, from that we can see 60 divided by 100 equals 0.6. That would tell us that the marginal propensity to consume would be 0.6. Incidentally, on the same report that I'd read about this scenario, it had said that UK incomes had actually risen by 3.5%. Meanwhile, expenditure had risen by 3%. Now, this suggests a marginal propensity to consume in the UK economy of the order of perhaps about 0.85 there. So very, very high ratio there. Very high indeed. And this will have a profound effect on aggregate demand, as we'll see in our next lesson on the multiplier. Okay, but we must remember, of course, that marginal propensity to consume and the average propensity to consume are affected by the level of withdrawals that is taking place within an economy. Now, in most multiple choice questions, you deal with a closed economy model with a financial sector, i.e. that there's some savings element involved in the economy. Okay, so of course savings is denoted by S, imports M, and taxation T. Of course, all of this is money leaving the economy, so that will have a direct influence on the marginal propensity to consume there. Okay, so the final element that we just need to make sure that we're clear on is that of the marginal propensity to save. So, as we've mentioned, some societies, like the Chinese economy, will choose to save a much higher proportion of their income. And we can measure this in exactly the same sort of way, where we've got a change in the savings level divided by that change in income. Now, what's a good level? Well, it very much depends. But it's certainly argued that in some circumstances you can even get a marginal propensity to consume beyond one. Well, how could that happen? Well, it could be perhaps due to the amount of debt that households choose to take on. As households take on more debt, it means that they can spend in advance of any income change. Now, this can pose problems further down the line for the economy. So this is why, when it comes to UK growth being largely composed of increases in consumption spending, this is why it can be a cause for concern in the longer term health of the economy, because it can reflect increasing debt levels. That is certainly happening within the UK economy right now, and it is a slight worry. So ideally, we'd like to balance out this consumption to generate a bit more investment, so that we're really thinking about the longer term sustainability of our economic growth. Okay, we'll leave it there for this lesson. We'll look at these marginal propensities, particularly the MPC, in our next lesson. Thanks, guys.